Welcome to Newsline. I'm Keikichi Hanada in Tokyo. Here are some of the stories we are following this hour. Pakistan's Prime Minister has demanded the US leaders end drone strikes in his country, saying the issue has become a major irritant. United Nations delegates have criticized Chinese leaders for their record on human rights, saying they need to stop putting limits on freedom. And people in areas hit by the March 2011 disaster in Japan have published a magazine in English as a thank you to overseas volunteers who helped clean up. Pakistan's Prime Minister is hoping a summit this week in Washington will bring about more amicable ties. But Nawaz Sharif says US forces have to stop using drones in his country. He says the attacks violate Pakistan's territorial integrity and hurt the fight against terrorism. Sharif spoke at the United States Institute of Peace. He said the attacks have disturbed and agitated his people.
This issue has become a major irritant in our bilateral relationship as well. I would therefore stress the need for an end to drone attacks.
Sharif is expected to raise the issue later on Wednesday when he meets with US President Barack Obama. He says Pakistanis and Americans have common interests, including the security problems in Afghanistan. US forces have been targeting Islamist militants with drone strikes near Pakistan's border with Afghanistan. United Nations investigators say at least 400 civilians have been killed since 2004. Members of an international human rights group have been doing their own investigation of the attacks. Researchers with Amnesty International say the killing of civilians may be a violation of international law. Amnesty's researchers studied US attacks in northwestern Pakistan from January 2012 to August of this year. They say some of the victims had no connection to Islamic extremists. They are urging US leaders to release more information and conduct a thorough investigation. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney denied that the strikes are illegal.
We take extraordinary care to make sure that our counterterrorism actions are in accordance with all applicable domestic and international law.
Carney said President Obama believes conventional missiles are far less precise and are likely to cause more casualties. Delegates from Western countries have accused Chinese leaders of widespread abuses of human rights. They blame the Chinese for arresting activists, blocking internet sites, and restricting the freedoms of ethnic minorities. They made their appeals at the meeting in Geneva of the United Nations Human Rights Council.
China fails human rights! China fails human rights!
Council members review the records of all 192 UN member states once every 4 years. This year, China was among those under scrutiny. The delegate from Poland called for an investigation into the Chinese government's crackdown on journalists and activists. He said authorities should stop restricting freedom of expression immediately. The French envoy turned his attention to the situation in Tibet and Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. He asked Chinese leaders to allow UN human rights monitors to visit those areas. China's delegates said leaders in Beijing have made improvements over the last 4 years. Wu Hailong said they've taken measures to protect people's rights to freedom of expression and religion. But he said attempts to split the country or disturb the tranquility of society will not be permitted, even under the banner of human rights. Council members will write up their recommendations, then present them to the Chinese government by next March. One man who has kept China's human rights record in the international spotlight is activist Cheng Wen-chan. His family has just applied for visas to join him in the US. Chen got into trouble for exposing forced abortions by Chinese authorities. He escaped house arrest last year and fled to the US Embassy in Beijing. The Chinese government later allowed him to move to New York to study. Chen has continued to speak out on human rights in his homeland. He has accused officials there of persecuting his family. On Tuesday, Chen's mother visited the US Embassy in Beijing. She and other members of her family applied for visas.
My health is getting worse and I'm aging. I will not have many opportunities to meet him.
Family members say they're being subjected to more and more harassment. Chen's older brother said he was almost struck by a vehicle while riding his motorcycle near his home. Myanmar's pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi has collected a human rights award she won more than 2 decades ago. Aung San Suu Kyi won the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought in 1990, but she was under house arrest at the time. She could not leave the country because that would have put her at risk of never being able to return. Authorities released her 3 years ago. Last year, she won a seat in parliament and became leader of the opposition.
We still have to work very hard before the basic law of the land, which is the Constitution, will guarantee us the right to live in accordance with our conscience.
The President of the European Parliament praised her for what she's done. Martin Schulz said she's shown that people who fight for democracy will prevail in the end, no matter how long it takes. Diplomats are trying to use their influence to bring the two sides in Syria's civil war together. They are hoping to persuade leaders of Syria's main opposition group to attend an international peace conference, but opposition leaders are resisting. Diplomats from the United States and Russia have been trying for months to organize peace talks. Their latest plan is to hold a conference next month in Geneva. Representatives of 11 Western and Arab countries met in London to try to move the process forward. They agreed opposition leaders need to be united if they hope to put an end to the civil war. But some of those leaders refused to sit down with representatives of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The British Foreign Secretary offered some reassurances.
Assad would play no role in that future government of Syria.
Opposition leaders are not convinced, including the head of the main opposition group, the Syrian National Coalition. Ahmed al-Jawba said they will not participate in any negotiations as long as Assad remains in power. South Korea's unification minister says its government is ready to resume talks on reopening a symbol of cooperation between the two Koreas. The tourism project at Mount Kumgang has been on hold for 5 years.
I believe that through such talks, people from both countries can come up with approaches we can agree upon and make progress toward resuming the project.
Thousands of people from both sides of the border used to visit Mount Kumgang to enjoy the scenery. It grew into an important source of foreign currency for the North Koreans. But authorities suspended the project in 2008 after a North Korean soldier shot and killed a tourist from the south. Ryu said North Korean leaders need to take responsibility for what happened, then both sides can work toward reopening the project. But he said they need to ensure that tourists are safe. White House officials say the recent partial government shutdown will likely trim economic growth by 0.25 percentage point in the fourth quarter this year. Head of the Council of Economic Advisers, Jason Furman, said payroll growth in October could decline by 120,000 due to the shutdown.
So as we look at more of October, those numbers could change and could potentially get worse. This all just really underscores how unnecessary and harmful the shutdown and the brinksmanship was for the economy, why it's important to avoid repeating it.
The White House calculation is based on 8 economic data, including jobless claims during the first 12 days of October. Officials in Japan and Russia are using electricity generation to boost ties. A new power plant equipped with Japanese turbines has started operations in eastern Russia. The thermal facility provides electricity and hot water to the country's largest aquarium using natural gas. Japanese machinery maker Kawasaki Heavy Industries supplied its 2 turbines. The president of a local power company praised the efficiency of the machinery. Russian government officials are trying to make better use of natural gas reserves by improving infrastructure. They are building gas supply networks in the Far East region, and they are also working to convert thermal plants that burn coal. A Kawasaki Heavy Industries official says he hopes the new plant will encourage economic cooperation. The people at Apple have unveiled a thinner, lighter version of the iPad. They say it's their weapon to fight off the competition.
iPad Air.
The new tablet has the same size screen as its predecessor, but is about 20% thinner and 28% lighter. Consumers in the US and Japan can buy the device in about a week. They can expect to pay about $500 for a basic model. Apple's executives will also launch an improved version of the iPad mini later in November.
iPad combines into an incredible experience hardware and amazing software and intuitive services into an experience that no one else can match.
South Korea's Samsung Electronics and other firms are offering tablets that run Google's Android operating system. Apple's tablet sales for the April to June period fell year-on-year for the first time since 2010. It used to hold over half the market share. Now it only has 32%. The executives hope the new products will help them win back what they've lost. Firefighters in eastern Australia are trying to make every minute count. They're working to contain wildfires. The flames have burned through vast tracts of land and destroyed more than 200 homes. One person has died. NHK World's Takeo Nakajima reports from Sydney.
Some 60 wildfires are burning in Australia's eastern state of New South Wales. The Premier declared a state of emergency after the flames tore through residential areas. Some people have been told to evacuate their homes and head to shelters. Firefighters have been trying to keep the fires from merging. As you can see behind me, hazard reduction burn has been conducted in order to stop fire from expanding. Firefighters raced to make the most of the cooler weather on Tuesday. They burned vegetation and smaller bushes to eliminate fuel for the fire. The cleared areas will act as barriers to contain the flames. Firefighters at this regional headquarters in Lithgow are monitoring the situation in Blue Mountains National Park, where the wildfires are the worst. They're trying to maximize their resources. More than 2,000 firefighters have been called in from around Australia to battle the flames, but they still don't have enough teams to cover all fronts.
The biggest challenge is purely the large size of this fire. It's over 40,000 hectares and over 300 kilometres around it, so it's a massive fire. There's a lot of fire edge, and that is the most challenging at this point in time, trying to get to all that.
Some of the fires started spontaneously. Residents say in other places, strong winds brought down power lines, igniting the dry bush. Defense Ministry officials are looking into whether explosives at a military training site sparked the fire at a national park. Authorities have arrested 2 boys they suspect deliberately started fires in other areas. Millions of people are seeing the result. Smoke is clouding the skies. A haze enveloped Sydney on Monday. A burning smell lingers in the air.
Coming in on the train, you could definitely smell it, and it's pretty hazy, as you can see today.
Wildfires are common during the summer month, but authorities say it's extraordinary for them to be this intense and large scale, so early in the season. Forecasters blame an unusually dry winter, and they say the past 12 months have been the warmest on record. The conditions for wildfires were perfect. And the firefighters are bracing for those conditions to worsen. Forecasters are calling for hotter and drier weather on Wednesday. Takeo Nakajima, NHK World, Lithgow, New South Wales.
A Japanese astronaut has finished his final pre-launch tests and is ready to head into orbit. Koichi Wakata is set to be the first Japanese commander of the International Space Station. Wakata has been preparing with his crew at a training center outside Moscow. He'll spend half a year in space. He'll take command of the station during the final 2 months.
Communication is the key to the success of space flight. So I would like to make sure that we have good teamwork, communication between the crew members and also with the ground support teams.
The astronauts will take off in 2 weeks on board the Russian spacecraft Soyuz. Japan's chefs could soon find their work endorsed by the United Nations. Members of a UNESCO committee have recommended that Japan's culinary arts be designated an intangible cultural heritage asset. UNESCO is expected to endorse the decision in December. Japan's Cultural Affairs Agency proposed adding the country's food culture to the list of heritage assets. Agency officials said the recipes, tableware, and other culinary arts are a fundamental part of Japanese culture. The officials say they hope UNESCO recognition will be a boost for businesses hit by concerns about food safety since the 2011 nuclear accident. UNESCO currently recognizes 4 food cultures: French, Turkish, Mexican, and Mediterranean. Thousands of foreign volunteers traveled to northeast Japan after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Many of them helped clear debris in the city of Ishinomaki in Miyagi Prefecture. Now, a team of local amateur journalists is trying to give something back to people overseas. NHK World's Jun Yotsumoto has the story.
Motokazu Arakawa runs a gas company in Ishinomaki. He's very busy these days with reconstruction efforts. Arakawa has another commitment as well. He started an English magazine with 2 friends last year. They named it Rolling Press because they want to set people's minds in motion. They write about what's going on in their hometown.
We're trying to focus on locals who are working with a positive attitude.
Arakawa had a good reason to start a magazine for people overseas. The March 11 tsunami destroyed his home and his business. He says the devastation made him feel hopeless. But then many foreign volunteers arrived and offered help.
I was amazed that so many of them came and worked so hard for us. I'm not sure I would have done the same thing in their situation.
Arakawa's team is working on an article about a Japanese restaurant that was destroyed in the tsunami. Many foreigners helped clear debris from the ruins. The restaurant was able to reopen this summer in time for its 100th anniversary.
The support of many volunteers made it possible for us to reopen.
One of Arakawa's goals is to tell the story of survivors who were helped by foreigners. One of the volunteers was Free McWilliams. She helped clear the debris in Ishinomaki. Now that the cleanup is finished, she's helping in another way, by translating articles in rolling press into English.
I want to stay involved. And it's also just a continuation. Through the 2.5 years, I've grown a kind of affinity towards Ishinomaki, and it's become a place that I feel is quite near and dear to my heart.
So far, more than 1,700 copies of Rolling Press have been distributed around the world. Arakawa and his team are trying even more to disseminate to the world more information about the situation in affected areas and the progress of reconstruction. They've also conducted a tour for foreign visitors. Arakawa hopes to share his experiences from the disaster and what he learned from them.
I felt natural power is so huge and cannot fight for nature. But later on I felt people's power is also very huge, can change your mind, can change your situation.
Arakawa told the people on the tour about Rolling Press. Some took copies to bring home with them.
It reminds people that, life here still isn't perfect and there's still a lot of work to be done.
I would definitely like to come back and see how it's doing in 5 years' time, 10 years' time.
I'd like many people to visit Ishinomaki to see the rebuilding for themselves. They can connect with residents who were helped by foreign volunteers. That would help the economy too. It's my dream.
Thank you again. Arakawa says he'll keep spreading the word about people in Ishinomaki, their new lives and challenges. He also says he hopes to attract more tourists from overseas. Jun Yotsumoto, NHK World, Ishinomaki.
Time now for a check of the weather. A typhoon is battering southwestern Japan, and another is on the way. Meteorologist Sakamori tells us the latest.
Hello there. We've been focusing on Typhoon Francisco. As you can see, clouds are covering Minami Daito Island. We have some video from this location. Trees are swaying in the winds, and gusts of about 105 kilometers per hour were reported this morning. Ferry services and flights have been canceled due to strong winds and high surf. Now, it looks like the southwestern islands of Japan will remain on the stormy side throughout the day, and it looks like gusts of about 200 kilometers per hour likely, with waves of about 10 meters today, and a rainfall of about up to 100.